So if you followed this channel for a while now, you know that I've actually gotten this current iteration of my setup for at least 6 to 7 months. It's a beastly PC I built with brand new and second-hand parts with a Ryzen 7 3700X and X370 Taichi, 32 gigs of dominated Platinum RAM, 3000 MHz, and the GTX 1070 Ti. It's a really good computer, especially for the price I got it at, because I was scavenging a lot of parts secondhand. And if you know about the rest of the setup, I'm gonna do a full-on room setup tour in the future, so subscribe for that. But the rest of the setup is pretty simple. I've got a 1080p standard monitor as a second monitor and a 1440p Dell Ultra Sharp from 2014 as my main monitor for video editing and gaming needs. And then I've got a keyboard which is a TechWare Phantom and RGB TKL, and I've got a Logitech G102 as my gaming mouse. But this video is going to be a pretty unique one because I was sitting down in front of my setup playing CS the other day, and I was thinking, hold up, I spent all this money on the GTX 1070 Ti and like a beastly gaming setup, a 1440p monitor, but I have never played a AAA title with fancy graphics on this rig, even though this is the most powerful computer I've ever touched. So I went out and bought a couple of games, and today we're gonna review my own setup, see whether I chose the right parts, whether you should follow me when it comes to choosing the parts that I did, whether I chose the right things to buy, whether I chose the right setup from the perspective of gaming. Because when it comes from the perspective of editing and workstation needs, this rig kills, alright? I've been enjoying it. It's been doing a great job for me ever since day one, and there's nothing to complain about this whole setup when it comes to editing. But I want to find out from the perspective of gaming if this rig was a good idea, or was there anything that should be an upgrade found here. So welcome to Setup Review Episode 1. I don't think there's going to be an Episode 2 anytime soon, but I'll just say Episode 1 anyway. Now before we start the video and before we start the test and start playing games on this, which I'm kind of excited about, I'm gonna say that I reply to every single comment, so if you have anything to ask away down below. Okay, so I'm gonna be real here. There aren't that many AAA titles that I could honestly afford, and in reality I only really play Counter-Strike. I've played 966 hours of Counter-Strike, but I've decided that I was gonna test some AAA titles. So I actually have on the other screen, which is not being recorded currently, my AMD Ryzen Master open and my Task Manager open, which I can drag over here. So as you can see, the AMD Master utility is showing me a bunch of things like peak speed, PBT, CPU power, and all these things, so I can kind of keep track to it. This isn't a benchmark or anything because it's not really that interesting. This is just me messing around and me having a little bit of fun with AAA titles and stuff like that, because this is honestly quite an interesting thing for me. So we have some games that we're going to go through here. Elite Dangerous, I just installed it. Far Cry New Dawn, I just installed it, and I think this is pretty much the two main AAA titles that we're gonna go with today. If there's anything else that I wanted to test, I would definitely install it or just buy it later, but for now I have these two games. I haven't thought of anything else that I am willing to play. So I've actually played 33 minutes of this AAA title, so I lied a little bit, but let's be real here. This isn't much at all. 33 minutes is very minimal. I hardly finished the tutorial. So let's jump straight into it and let's see how it goes. So we're gonna start off with some Far Cry New Dawn here, and this is gonna be the first game we're testing out. I've played a little bit of it. It's so technically what I said at the start isn't completely true, but it's not really that much for an impression, and I didn't play it on like medium. I only played it on medium settings, which is not the level of performance I can get from the system. I can get more than that, I'm sure of it. I'm gonna up the settings. I'm gonna see how good of an experience I can get. I'm getting 1000 FPS right now in the menu, which is not very relevant. So we're gonna hit the menu screen, and we're logging in and stuff. And I think, yeah, we're recording. I don't think the FPS is being recorded, but roughly right now I'm getting about 60 FPS in this loading screen. And let's see how we go. So coming into options right now, I think I've already changed this to ultra settings, but let's take a look at what settings. Yeah, everything's on ultra. I've turned off motion blur for obvious reasons. I've done TAA. Everything's pretty much insane right now. VSync is off. although I would turn on VSync, I don't really like VSync and stuff. The input lag is too noticeable, too annoying for me. Resolution scale is at 1. All my settings are pretty much mostly default, except the quality is at ultra. I would run it at a higher refresh rate, but it doesn't seem to recognize my monitor overclock. And it's not HDR is not available for this. So we've got all that set. So that's the settings, and we're gonna test out this game. I'm pretty excited. I only played it in medium settings so far, so I want to see what a AAA title is like at its highest possible settings, and hopefully we can still get a decent frame rate with this, even though we're running, you know, with the NVIDIA Shadow Play on. Let's get into it. I'm not gonna run the benchmark. I'm not a fan of that, and we're gonna hit continue game because I played a little bit of the start. The first stage and a half, something like that, and we're just gonna be loading in. We're gonna see what happens. So right now we're in the house, and I'm getting about 70 FPS. There's not much going on in the screen, but I'm getting a bit of screen tearing. So because I'm not just reviewing my PC here, my PC choices here, I'm actually reviewing everything. I'm also reviewing like my monitor choices, my keyboard choices, and my mouse choices. I'm actually, you know, curious to see how, as an experience overall, how it works for a AAA title. So let's give that a shot. I'm gonna talk to this person. Blah 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 blah. We need all the help we can get. Okay, thank God we can press escape to skip. Yeah. So one thing I like about my keyboard is that it's got volume buttons. You know, it's a shortcut. So that is a bonus for me. I genuinely think this is very important in 2020. If you're getting a keyboard, get one with like volume control and stuff. So we're playing at 1440p, which is the native resolution for this screen, and we're actually getting too much FPS, which is why we're getting some screen tearing. And if there's one thing I want to upgrade in this setup, and one thing I regret about getting this setup, is the monitor, because it's great for editing and stuff, but it doesn't have G-Sync or FreeSync, so it really does have pretty bad tearing, and not that great as a setup choice. So since we're reviewing the whole setup at once, this is what we're looking at. So I'll start looking there. I'm guessing it's the exclamation mark over there. I mean, the whole point of this is just to experience AAA titles. And right now I'm not having that impressive experience. Maybe Far Cry 5 isn't the best game because it isn't really that good of a game. But apparently New Dawn's a fun game. I'm not the biggest fan of single player. Blah 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 blah. I mean, if you look at the details of the graphics, it is good, but it is good, but it's not like phenomenal, and the tearing is just destroying. I'm not a real big fan of single player games because it's just not that interesting for me. It's a bit too long-winded and stuff. I'd rather just watch the story online. I'm that kind of lazy person, but if you like single player games, you know, if that's your thing, go ahead. But for me, I'm not a fan, not a huge fan. I rather competitive, fast-paced things like CS dude, I'm getting dizzy. Okay, I really need G-Sync. The frame tearing it's atrocious. I'm finding it really hard to see stuff on screen. Maybe the FPS is too low, but I'm starting to feel nauseous. And I'm not even like lying or anything. So we've found more gear. So yeah, I mean, in terms of experience, AAA title, this game isn't that great. Like, it seriously isn't that great. I mean, graphics wise, it is good, but it's not impressing me that much. Even on ultra settings at 60 FPS. Second thing that I've learned about this setup, learned from this setup, is that I genuinely need a G-Sync monitor if I were to play these games at like only 60 FPS. Because I'm used to playing CSGO at 200 FPS on a 60Hz monitor. Stuff like that. So I'm getting a bit dizzy playing this game at this frame rate, so if I were to play this on my own, which I probably will continue, I'll play it at like medium settings or low settings, something like that, instead of ultra, because I want to get like a really high FPS relative to my screen, relative to my refresh rate, so that I get something consistent and stuff. So if you look at like the AMD, you know, if you look at my task manager right now, very interestingly, we're only at about like, I think our highest was about 70% utilization, and we're running at 4 gigahertz and stuff. So one funny thing you'll see about my task manager, which I'm actually gonna show you guys like this, is that it says my RAM is running at 2133. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it says my RAM is running at 2133 instead of the 2666 that is actually running at, that, you know, Taskmaster and HW info tells me. So maybe it's got to do with like motherboard compatibility and stuff, because I'm using an old motherboard with a new CPU, but I don't know. So currently my CPU temps, the highest I think it went was about 80 degrees Celsius. That's pretty dope. That's not really good, but I'm using the default stock cooler, and 80 degrees, it's acceptable. It's not going to be super stable for any overclocks, but that'll be fine. The FPS has honestly been consistently about 60 FPS the whole time. It usually was about 65 to 70. In fact, most of the time, I didn't notice any major dips. However, in high FPS areas like inside the base where you weren't really loading anything, my eyes were getting pretty dizzy and pretty confused with the game, because there was a lot of tearing, which I actually can demonstrate now. So if you look at that, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a lot of tearing going on. I know it's not a 60 FPS video, but there's plenty of tearing to be seen, and I'm not a fan of that. So right now, let's go and play another game, a different game. So we're just gonna quit the desktop. I'll continue this game another time. So one thing that's awesome about the Ryzen 7 that I found, because I was messing around with this, was that I could just play games and then edit video and just alt tab between them very, very seamlessly, especially if the game is just like CSGO or something like that. We're gonna play Elite Dangerous next. Now I literally just bought this game, so everything's a bit, you know, new, and I might not even, I have to set it up and stuff. But one thing that I have found really interesting and really awesome about this system, since we're talking about my whole setup here, is that the 32 gigs and the 8-core Ryzen 7, it doesn't necessarily give me a lot of gaming performance relative to a Ryzen 5, but that Ryzen 7, I feel like those two cores would have definitely helped in my workload, which is usually often alternating between playing games and editing video and watching YouTube, and having all those different things open at once really is an enjoyable experience. It's like I can out tab in and out of apps really, really smoothly and really, really seamlessly, which I don't think a lot of people, you know, can relate to. Let's play this game. Let's give it a shot and let's see how things go. Elite Dangerous. 1200 FPS right now in the menu screen. So one thing I found that was a very common thing with this setup is that every time I launch a game, it will default to 1080p. I don't know if it's because of the game, or because it's all because of my NVIDIA settings, or because it's just the way the setup it is, or the monitor is being kind of old. So I'm just gonna do hardware detection. I'm not sure if it's because of that, but I really find that it always defaults to 1080p, even though I'm using a 1440p monitor. So let's first off set the display. Let's set the it's not even at 1410. It's not even at 1080. It's at 720p. The refresh rate, we're gonna apply that, set that, and then we're gonna see how. Keep the changes. I love how fast settings register with this system. It was an upgrade from coming from just a laptop and stuff. We're gonna do in terms of graphic. We're gonna do, like, for quality, we're gonna do ultra. I don't really care. I want to whack it. As hard as I can, and just, you know, up the settings for literally everything. I love high field of view as well. Okay, so apply those settings and we're going to give this a shot. This is pretty dope. I mean, graphically, this one is definitely a better looking game than Far Cry New Dawn. And I know it's an older game, but maybe just like more details put into it, but graphically it feels more impressive. Maybe it's just the ambience and the aesthetic, but currently we're running at 100 FPS anyway, so we're just gonna hit auto launch. Auto launch. Oh. How do you... spacebar. Okay. Auto launch sequence begin. I feel like I'm just gonna crash this ship and it's gonna be hilarious, but at least it's content. The beauty of auto launch is that you can relax and enjoy the view. So since we're doing that, middle click to look around. We can look at the graphic details, and because this is the first time I'm playing like a space team AAA title, I'm not gonna lie, I really like the look, like the detail and the graphics. I can see why people pay a lot of money for RTX, because I'm guessing the experience of me going from basically a laptop to a 1070 Ti playing ultra settings is going to be the same as someone playing a 1070 Ti going to an RTX, you know, so playing ray traced games. So we're gonna take a look around. I love the detail. I honestly love the graphics of these games. It actually looks really nice. I'm really impressed by it so far, but maybe it's just I don't have that much to base my standards off of, but it definitely looks better than Far Cry New Dawn, and it definitely runs better because it's like 120 FPS. So yeah, and it's not having crazy screen tearing issues, but I'm guessing it's because I have a consistently high frame rate, so that should be why. I mean, this game is definitely built for someone to play with what's it called, joysticks or controllers or whatever it's called. So I'm definitely not in the right place right now, but I am messing around in space and it looks really cool. So engage reverse thrust. I'm guessing that's what we're doing now. Alright. Why is my ship so slow, man? I thought I got a Rari, man. Feels pretty good. I mean, about as good as it will be with a mouse and keyboard. I'm sure that the true experience for this is going to be with I'm confused as to where my target is now. It is fun flying around a spaceship. I am getting pretty dizzy, but at least there's no tearing issues that is creating that dizziness. But essentially I was running okay, so what we're looking at is, so what I actually want to show you now is I want to show you my AMD Ryzen Master. So the temperatures for me are about 60 degrees Celsius with the stock cooler, and the ambient temperature is about 27 degrees Celsius. In my room it's pretty warm even with the AC on and stuff like that. So everything is working pretty impressively. I'm very happy with the temps on this setup. I'm very happy with the performance of this setup. My GPU is only at 60 degrees Celsius, which is very, very nice, and everything is running very well. So I haven't overclocked anything. I've been running everything stock because honestly, just the hassle of benchmarking and stuff, I don't have the time on my hands, at least right now. So everything's running stock, everything's running cool. The driver version is this one. I think it's the latest. It might not be the latest, but it is what it is. So I guess it's time to review my setup overall then. What are my final thoughts and conclusion on this? Well, the answer is pretty simple. A, I really like this setup. B, there are still some things I want to upgrade, because in the tech world, you know, you can never have enough, right? So things I want to upgrade and the problems with this setup I've found so far are essentially this. The motherboard is too old and doesn't give me much of an upgrade path and gives me poor memory compatibility. I've been running my RAM at a much slower speed than what it's capable of, which is making me lose out in a bunch of performance because Ryzen chips really enjoy having fast RAM. The second thing I've noticed about this setup is that I really need to get a better monitor if I wanted to play games at a really, high quality and stuff. Look, the Dell Ultrasharp is excellent for work, video editing and stuff. Color accuracy is honestly quite respectable for a monitor of its age and its price. So there's really nothing to complain about there. However, there is a lot to complain about when it comes to its refresh rate. So it's only 60 Hz, and even though it's overclocked to 86 Hz, it tends to struggle a lot in games, especially when the frame rate I'm getting isn't amazing. Because it isn't a variable refresh rate monitor with something like G-Sync or FreeSync, I find that it tends to really make me really dizzy with screen tearing, input lag and things like that. So if I were to play a lot more games on this system, which I really don't plan to, I would go and get a G-Sync monitor or a FreeSync monitor, whatever the 1070 Ti supports. I think the 1070 Ti actually supports both FreeSync and G-Sync, so I will go and get a variable refresh rate monitor so that my gaming experience won't be as dizzy inducing as compared to what it is now. Now, I'm not unhappy with this monitor. I'm not actually going to change this monitor, but if I could upgrade, that would be one of the things I would upgrade, especially from a gaming perspective, since this is a review of my overall setup from a gaming perspective. Now, when it comes to mouse, keyboard, headphones and stuff, I honestly have nothing to say because I've been using this for like 3 years, 4 years. The mouse pad, the mic and the headphones have been there since I think 2017 or 2018. So they're like extensions of my body now, so there's really nothing to complain there. But the keyboard that I got currently, the TechWare Phantom, is excellent and I'm going to do a full review of it. So if you want to check that out, please subscribe and wait for that to come out. But I absolutely love the keyboard I'm using currently. However, I do have one complaint. I actually realized I really hate the sound of cherry blues or any sort of blue switch. So another upgrade for this setup, since we're trying to self-reflect here, is to change out the switches for this keyboard to something like a brown switch or Holy Pandas or something nice. Something linear maybe, give that a shot. So that's it for this video. I hope you found it as educational or as enjoyable as it was for me, because all I did was play games and find and discover things about my setup that I didn't know I liked and hated that much. If you did enjoy this video, like and subscribe. It would be greatly appreciated. It would really help out this channel. And anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.